So we're gonna make a skeleton for this flour sack, and again, it's gonna be like a little hunched up person crouching inside a flour sack, waving little flappy arms and having little stompy feet. So it's gonna be really cute. And we're gonna start with a skeleton. It's gonna be a really basic, simplified version of a full humanoid biped skeleton. Obviously, there will be some differences. The flour sack doesn't really have a head above its shoulders. So we'll do our best, but it's going to be a little different. Now, before I begin, I just want to remind everybody that one of the big tricks with joints is that every joint has two separate types of rotations. If I look in the attribute editor, I can see that the joint has three rotates. It's got rotate XYZ. It's also got orient XYZ. And the orient is where the joint hides the direction that it's actually facing. So when I look at each of these joints, I can see that rotate is set to 0, but orient is set to a completely different angle. Even this last one, which, as you know, is intended to just square up with the world space grid, even this one is going to have a funky orientation. These orients can be altered in order to get a different bending angle, but they're not native. So just remember that with all joints, one of the focuses is that rotate is set to 0 and orient is where the joint's actual angle of rotation is. You can also see these things called local rotation axes. The local rotation axis is in the middle of the joint, and its job is to point in the direction of the bone. So Maya defaults to having X point down the bone. X is this red axis here, Y is green, Z is blue, and I can see that with all of these, X is pointing down the bone. So as I build the skeleton for the flour sack, I want to be a little bit aware of the direction of the local rotation axis, because that's telling me where the joint's orientation is. And the orientation is the angle that the joint is actually bent at, whereas rotate will always be 0. So when I look in the channel box, I don't have access to the joint orientation, and most of the time that's okay. We may reference joint orientation a couple of times as we set the skeleton up and as we set the controls up. This is just something for you to keep in the back of your head as we build the skeleton. So I will just pause this here so we have a nice short video about joint orientation, and then in the next video I will build the spine.